¿Se me oye? ¿Sí? Ahora sí me oye, ¿no? Ahora sí. Vale, perfecto. Anda, mira, tengo para pasar transparencia y todo. Bueno, pues...
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. So we are perfectly conscious that we are very close to lunchtime, okay? We will try to be entertaining. When the call for papers for CyberCamp was published, our company was very young, only 1.5 years. Still, we were very clear that one of our objectives was to make ourselves known, and one of our objectives were one of the things that we wanted to do were to participate in call of papers. And then at the time I had a presentation ready, a presentation that I delivered at the University of Malaga. That presentation was a 20-minute presentation, and this time we have an hour. So therefore, I decided not only to talk about my experience, but also to share with you the experience of my partner. And then I mentioned that to my wife, and then my wife said, well, my profile was a purely technical profile, and perhaps not everyone will feel related to it. But because my partner has a different profile, so we decided also to share that with you. Well, short ago we heard about talking about different profiles working in cybersecurity. You can tell from our clothing that we are two dramatically different profiles. And then when we take part in projects, okay, we often introduce ourselves as it says on the screen, okay? This is myself, this is my partner, Jose, and now because we are kind of very close to you, okay, we would just want to be warmer in our presentation. I come from Granada. I live in Antequera, so therefore I'm playing home today. I went to IT school in Granada. I love data, I love beer, and I fit in very well with this prototype of this person who had a vocation for cybersecurity, a vocation that started at a very, very young age. And I have hacking blood. One of my Gary is my ancestor. So what I said is that I carry that in my blood. So I come from Ceuta, I'm living in Madrid, I'm a proud father, I'm a follower of athletic football team, I love traveling, and nowadays I also became a businessman. And now I would like to ask you, especially young people here, well, here in Spain many people are dreaming of becoming a civil servant, but nowadays being an entrepreneur is also trendy. How many of you in this room would like to be an entrepreneur? Well, there is a good number of people who want to be entrepreneurs. And that's why we are here for today. We are here to talk to you about entrepreneurship. If we are realistic, well, our company is a young company, only 1.5 years, so we do not have that much experience, but still we feel that we are in a position to share something with you and to help you out. When I gave this presentation at the University of Granada, the person who asked me to give that presentation, I told this person, I don't know very much about entrepreneurship. And then this person said, no, don't you worry. You go over there and you just share your story with your audience, and that's it. Okay, so I said, well, my story is Hackers, which is a movie that was launched in 1995. At the time, in 1995, I was 12 years old. And I was fascinated. Well, first of all, I was fascinated by Angelina Jolie. I'm still in love with her. And I was also fascinated by everything that was happening in that film. I wanted to become a cyberpunk and then to carry a backpack with a 5 kilogram computer in it, running across the city, chasing the bad guys, having a Chinese friend. I loved it. Okay, my film was Braveheart. I'm not going to tell you about any of the wars and the struggles in it. And well, the film, I still like to watch it. I very much like to go back to the time where I discovered the world of hacking through that film. Now I play some of the frames of the movie, and precisely what you will see is what Jose and myself are doing nowadays. So notice especially the part when they talk about the color books. Click on play, please. Thank you. Can you play the video?
Sin hacer absolutamente nada. Y tu nombre pasa por 17 ordenadores en un día. ¿1984? Ya veis, falló en la fecha. Orwell sigue aquí, a lo grande. No tenemos nombre, tíos. No hay nombres. Somos seres anónimos. ¿Me das una patata?
Es serial killer. Está muy zumbado, pero sabe cosas. Bueno, tíos, mirad. Estoy en ese ordenador. Estoy echando un vistazo.
¿Tienes libros de colores? Ah, sí. Un arco iris en Technicolor. Veréis. El verde.
¿Qué es? Déjame ver. ¿Qué es esto?
Entornos Unix internacionales.
¿Y el naranja lujurioso?
Normas de seguridad informática. Departamento de Defensa. El libro Camisa Rosa, la guía IBM de PCs. Se llama así por la horrible camisa rosa que lleva el tío de la portada.
¿Esto?
El libro del diablo, la Biblia Unix.
¿Y esto?
Libro del dragón, códigos fuente.
¿Ah, sí? ¿Y qué es esto?
El libro rojo. Redes de Agencia Nacional de Seguridad. También llamado el maldito libro que no cabe en ningún estante.
Esa película que a Javi le flipaba.
That movie that Javi loved talked about that orange book, that US orange book, which was the first standard for system evaluation criteria. So, well, it started in the US and then many other countries joined it and implemented as a computer system evaluation criteria. It was, well, Javi and myself have been dealing and working in that computer system evaluation criteria for 11 years now. Okay, when Javi watched the film for the first time ever, he would have never have dreamt that at the end, in a few years' time, he would be working in that field. So the importance of that movie has been seen in a few years' time. And then when we talk about entrepreneurship, often we talk about the world of ideas, that you need to have like a breakthrough idea, a disruptive idea, innovative idea, an idea that would end up changing the world. But look what happened to me. Actually, I have no ideas. I don't think I ever had a disruptive idea. Well, I just had a business model and I tried to replicate it as best as possible. But what I always had in my life was a dream which was quite simple. That was to say, to devote my life to something that I loved, something that I was passionate about. And I also want to fulfill my dream and to live in the place where I want to live. I come from Granada and I love Granada and I want to live in Granada. And I also wanted to fulfill my dream and to work with the people that I wanted to work with. And now a dream that you put a date to becomes a goal. A goal which is broken down in steps becomes a plan, and an implemented plan can turn a dream into reality. Okay, this is the only complex to follow statement from the self-help book. But at the end of the day, this is true. This is the way it is. We all have dreams. But we really need to put a date, a deadline to fulfill our dreams. We need to give a time frame to it. If we don't do that, we will be most likely be beaten or by laziness or by mandates of society or by what the others expect from us. And then also extremely important, having a plan. If you want to achieve a goal, the best way or easiest way to achieve your goal is to break it down into steps. The steps that you have to follow that ultimately will take you to fulfill your dream. And this is what I did. Step number 1. Work in the field that I want to work.
Have you heard about Ikigai? This word here? It's a term, a Japanese word that means what makes you wake up get up every morning. It became very famous after a TED Talk. I guess you're familiar with TED Talks. It was a talk about longevity. They carried out a study and they saw in which regions of the world people lived longer. And they saw there was a bunch of isles south of Japan, Okinawa region, where people lived longer, even longer than the rest of Japan, which is the country with the highest life expectancy in the world. And besides the climate, food, and other factors, one of the factors that made these people live longer was that everyone had a clear idea about their ikigai, the thing that made them get up every morning. Later on, psychologists have developed this idea, and they say that ikigai is the crossing point or the combination of the things you like, the things the world needs, the things you can be paid for, the things you're good at. The crossing point between these 4 areas is your ikigai. Here we say the passion, your mission, your vocation, and your profession. If you combine these 4 things and you can do that, apparently you're going to live longer. In order to find your ikigai, they say that you need to ask yourself 4 questions. First, with which things you feel really comfortable. There are people who feel really comfortable speaking in front of an audience, but for other people, it's horrible. For other people, risky sports is really great, and for others, well, they would never do it. Another question, with which activities time goes by really quickly? I'm sure there are things that you start to do them and time goes by very quickly. It's 3 a.m. And you still sit in front of your computer and you say, oh, I can't believe I haven't realized how late it is. What things you find easy to do? We all have natural talents, natural skills. Some people draw perfectly well, and others, like myself, we're poor drawers. So, natural abilities define your ikigai. For example, I cannot prepare a PowerPoint presentation. I can't do it. The last question was, what did you like when you were a child? That's very important in order to discover your ikigai. As we get older, society teaches you things, they force you towards a path which is not necessarily yours, but when you're a kid, you do things more naturally and you devote your time to things that make you happy. In my case, it was perfectly clear. When I was a kid, I liked this. I was super freak. And I was lucky because when I was a kid, my brother, who was 8 years older, received this device as a present. And 3 months later, he was sent to a boarding school, so I got to keep the computer. I was very young back then. I didn't have games, but I wanted to play with the computer. I had that book, that handbook, with a series of games. There was an Arkanoid. You needed to copy it, and once you had copied, you executed it. Copy, I mean 6-7 pages of code, and if it was correctly copied, you could execute it, and then you could play. I didn't know about print code or anything similar. I just copied what was stated there, and then I could play my game. Then we had the golden age of Spanish software. There were plenty of games. I could play with plenty of games, but that my mother bought me at department stores or in flea markets. They were cracked games. They were like this. It looked like they were great, but the graphics back then were more or less like this. So there was a difference between the cover and the actual game. And my first contact with the hacking world was pokes. This is before the internet era. Back then we didn't have internet at home. And the only way we could access this type of information were the magazines that reached your neighborhood if you were lucky, because if they didn't, you had to go to the other part of the city to look for the magazines. This comes from the English verb to poke, which means to change. When you change a memory address, it was a code, like pseudo-assembling code, and you modify the game so that when it detected that you had crashed into your enemy, well, it was as if you hadn't crashed into it, and things like that. So you can imagine, after all of this, when I was 15, I was studying at high school. I thought I was God with my Linux. I used diskettes to install it. I had just watched the film Hackers. I spent the whole night in IRC, remote session. I did everything I could. I used to tell my parents, I'm going to be a self-taught hacker. I study and going to learn much more than at university. My mother was terrified at the thought that his child was going to end up in prison, robbing banks. Poor woman. And one day she said, you're going to go to university, you're going to study computing science. So I went there to Granada to study that. I didn't like it because I wanted to be a self-taught hacker, but with time I thanked it because I learned a lot of data structure, mathematics that were essential to understand more complicated concepts, and also the naps I took and the friends I made. We were thinner in that picture, but that's us. And I have nice memories from that time. We studied at university for 5 years, so not bad. We didn't like going to class, but we managed to finish our studies in 5 years. But I wanted to continue in the world of cybersecurity, but unfortunately, Granada was not a good place for that. In 2006, the word cybersecurity was not something you would hear in Granada. So, like many people from my class, I had to go to Madrid. I started to work for a consulting company, and after a while, I received a job proposal, a job offer in which a job was offered, and they required knowledge about assembling regular expressions. And for me, that was the big opportunity, so I went for it, I got it, and I started to work there with that orange book. I remember then when they told me that I was accepted, they sent me 4 PDF files for me to read, these 4 books. And for me, it was a dream come true because I could finally work in what I wanted. My life was simpler. When I was a kid, I used to play football. Perhaps I watched football with my father on TV, but that was it. I had never heard about cybersecurity. I was doing what I wanted. But it's true that when you're a child, an adolescent, a teenager, that's important for you. There are some things that happened and have a consequence in the future. I would say that was mainly my parents. My father used to say this, walk the talk. I couldn't just say that I had studied but I had failed the exam. No, he wanted hard facts, and throughout your life you want facts. Another thing my father said, you have to listen, see, and shut up. I would change it. I think you have to speak up when it's the right time, not at the wrong time. And this sentence is from my mother. Nothing in the world can replace being constant. It doesn't matter how good you are, if we do not continue to work. In the world of cybersecurity, what we did 10 years ago is completely different from now. You have to recycle yourself all the time. So the education you receive when you're a child, even if it had nothing to do with cybersecurity, it laid the foundations for my training. I've always looked for challenges. I remember I was at school in Ceuta, I was very happy. But I saw that I received good marks, even I didn't do a good job. I got bored. And I remember that when it was time to move on to high school, I told my parents I wanted to go to a public high school. So I went there, it was very good for me, and my little brother went to that high school after me. Then, picking up a degree at university, I studied computer science because when I was in high school, there was a psychologist there, and he told me, okay, you're going to become really rich with computing science. I didn't have much options, and I said, okay, why not? Perhaps I think I've let myself flow until I decided to do what I was going to do with my life. I started to work with a consulting company in Madrid because they come to an employment fair in Granada. They showed us a job, a first experience, and back then it was quite fashionable working for a consulting company. We just spent the 6-7 months Are you familiar with cultural overtime? Well, 12 years ago, the cool thing was staying after working hours, because other times it would look like you were not good enough. After a while there, I said, "These guys are crazy," and I left when my working hours were over. And in the consulting world, the usual thing was for bosses to be really hard on you. As I've said before, my football team is Atleti, and our coach says that people behave in the football pitch the same way they behave in their personal life. I think that this situation has changed a lot. Cyber what? After 6 months in a consulting company, my friend told me, "Do you want to come and work with me in cybersecurity?" I said, "Well, I don't know, maybe things have changed a lot." INCIBE was born in 2005 and this happened in 2007. No one spoke about cybersecurity ever. I knew something a little bit because, having a beer with him, perhaps he said something. But I had no clue about it. Why did I go to cybersecurity? Well, they paid more, you work your working hours, and it wasn't frowned upon. And he said, there are nice challenges here. You're just not copying and pasting a website for another client. There are very interesting things here. So I liked it. We had with our start challenges. We were given time to understand products and product assessments. And I started to love it. It was the first time that I thought, okay, I could work in this. It's very interesting. And my past was basically playing football. Madrid was nice. I think I went to every possible theater or musicals. Don't get fooled. His wife lived in the south of Spain. Yes, my wife lived in the south of Spain, and I had a dream. I wanted to do this, but in the south of Spain, not in Madrid. So the date came closer. I worked in Madrid for 5 years. I learned what it was getting up early in the morning in order to go to work, traffic jams, managing teams, teaching people, junior people, learning from people with more experience, being humble and accepting that there are people that are much better than you are. Those were things that I had to learn, and those years in Madrid, they were very useful for me. Then I was lucky to work with Jose there. We were friends from university. Those of you who have done things like this one, there are few feelings which can compare to overcome a challenge. We danced when we made something explode, making something overflow. And we had fun, a lot of fun, but time went by, and one day I said, this is it. And I quit. I had a good salary, a promising career, but it's not what I wanted. So with the contacts I made, I went to Granada, and I had a part-time job in Biotronic, my sister-in-law's company. Well, that's life. She worked in microcontrollers, and I helped her. And at the same time, The other part of my day was devoted to cybersecurity consulting as a freelance. So I could work in something I liked in the city I liked, in the middle of the crisis, so he was very brave. And I was with my girlfriend back then, she's my wife today, so it was great, wonderful years. However, there's something that they don't tell you when you decide to become an entrepreneur, and it's paperwork. You're not aware of how many things we have today. Since you're self-taught for everything. And you don't go to a tax advisor, you study the law, social security, the tax forms, everything, self-taught. Well, I received some fines because I made mistakes in my paperwork. And besides, there was the commercial side of it. I needed someone to sell myself. I'm not good at selling myself. I'm good at the keyboard. And I realized that I needed help. What did I do? I hired another friend from university. His company had just went into bankruptcy. And I realized that he did the cool things and I was his salesperson, I did the paperwork, but he did the coolest things. I spent 7 years doing technical things. But at some point, every time I woke up in the morning, it was more than a little boy when they have to go to school. I'd liked learning, I had the foundations, but I was bored. And you don't know how sad it is to wake up in the morning in order to go to work without wanting to. And I wanted something else. I wanted to lead teams. I wanted to move forward as a professional. And I remember one of my bosses, he said, "You're just a soldier." And I said, "Wow, that's hard." And as Javi says, it was a good salary, good working hours. When I explained this to my friends, they laughed at me. They said, "What's your problem? You're a privileged person." And perhaps I was, but every morning it was very hard. And my guardian angel came to me. It was LinkedIn. I would have never thought of sending CVs to companies in the industry. And one day, a company called me and they said, it was a competitor, and they said, "Do you want to be in charge the common criteria whole service?" At the beginning I said, "They're crazy. What do they see in myself?" Nowadays LinkedIn is a very common thing, but 4 or 5 years ago it wasn't that common. In fact, they contacted us through LinkedIn, but they called the company. They called my company and asked for me. And that's how my new adventure was born. My new life, I would say. They told me that I had to be a technical manager, and I said, "That's perfect." I helped the projects. I had to travel. At the beginning, it was really cool. Once you start to travel all the time, you didn't like it that much. But I was young, so I had everything in control. Managing teams. It was okay. I like being with people. I like that part. But no one told me that I need to carry out sales tasks. The first week when I arrived, they said, "Tomorrow we have a meeting with some Chinese guys and we need to sell this to them." What? Do you know who you've hired? Perhaps you're wrong. And no one ever trained me about how to sell. And now I sell my company's services. So my only solution was being myself. I'm not interested at selling techniques. What I did back then and what I do now was being honest with people, being myself. Before explaining a problem, I had to make the problem mine, and then I had to provide my client with solutions. I have a story with a client from Israel. They called on a Sunday. They were very angry because we had made a big mistake. And we accepted it, we started work on it, we solved it, and that same client has continued to work with us because he would say, perhaps someone else would have blamed others or read the small things in the contract, but we just accepted reality. There's been a failure, we fail all the time. Javi tells me I'm bipolar. I say one thing, then he talks to me, and then I change my view, and I say, it's okay, I've just changed my mind. I try to be myself all the time. I haven't prepared this talk. We make the slides, the presentation, and then I go with the flow. That's how I like to do things. So, when I arrived there, they told me my position was common criteria leader. I thought my boss is crazy. How could he come up with his name? I still think that he was a bit crazy. A very good person, though. And one day he said this. And for me, it was quite of a motivation. He was motivated to see that people below him in the company, he was motivated to see them grow. I'm sure he's happy for me. And I have that with people working with me. I always try that they grow, to make them grow. And if you manage to do that in the future, you'll see how satisfactory it is. I love the job, but the truth is that sometimes you love it so much that, well, sometimes I thought the money earned by the company was mine. Have you ever seen this video? Have you seen it? That's how I felt when I was given the job. When I was given the BlackBerry, my company's BlackBerry, I felt like this. You're just no one with a BlackBerry, that's it. And for a while I was that. And if you haven't worked in the consulting industry, well, I believe that. So I saw that my life was not a normal one. It was very important to have a personal life, to have a balance. And with the workers I have in my company, I have weird office hours because I'm taking care of my kid, and I send emails at weird hours. And when they answer me at that time, I get angry because I say you shouldn't be answering there at that time. You need to protect your personal life. And now it's Javi's turn. While Jose was living these experiences, I was working with the friend I had. We did cool things. We had some sort of infrastructure. But we were working in a small room in my flat. It was our office. It was not a garage, but it was the idea. It was like Bill Gates' garage. Yes, but it was second floor. At some point, I wanted to do something else. I I wanted to stop being under the radar. I wanted to start doing bigger things. And also, I was given the opportunity to be a teacher in the master's degree in cybersecurity at the University of Granada. So I thought that the pieces started to fit together to do something bigger. I'd been talking to Jose for a while, saying, well, why don't we create something together? We've worked and we were a good team, and he represented the commercial side of things. He had the ability of talking to clients and he has a good technical background. So apparently the pieces of this puzzle were fitting little by little. He hasn't said that he was very scared at creating a company. And I had a bit of a disappointment. I think that first you have to give and then you have to receive. But requesting, well, if you've just been 2 months in a company, you can't request. I like things to come naturally. After 2 years, the company had grown a lot. The department decided not to increase my salary. I said, okay, I have to travel less, and say, okay, Jose, but on Monday, please come to Barcelona because we have a very important meeting. I requested for more resources, for more people, and there were promises that were never fulfilled. At some point, I felt like I was being a fool. We weren't thinking in being entrepreneurs, just life brought me here. But at some point, I took the decision. Javi and I hadn't discussed the details about what we were going to create, but I said, that's it, enough is enough. I called my boss and I told him, this is it, I quit. I exploded, but in a controlled way. You have to be very elegant in life. In my old company, well, they hire us. It's our main customer. Why? Because I left with elegance. I worked for 5 months in the company after saying that I was leaving, to leave things in order. I think you always have to be elegant. So we started to talk more seriously with Javi. We had to make our calculations. We have a couple of napkins. Our business plan was very simple because it was just being brave. But I had doubts. What happens if it goes wrong? I'd worked in 2 most important companies in the field we were working. I saw I had to go abroad, but I wanted to stay in Spain.
And then a foreign multinational company offered me to work from home. And I said, well, there are other opportunities out there. I never thought about that. And then I decided to go on a holiday. And well, when you holiday, that is always good for you. And at that time I was reading that book as a working week of 4 hours. And then, well, I did not stick to that, to those 4-hour weekly hours. And then there is a list in this book about advantages and disadvantages, and everyone talks about entrepreneurship. So since, well, we had some saved money, so those people who become entrepreneurs and they ask to the bank for a loan and everything, they are very praiseworthy. But we didn't do that. We didn't have to do that. And this is Javi. And then, well, he decided to quit his job and then to go into partnership and then to set up our company. And well, at the end, I twisted his arm and we, as I say, set up our company. What is that? It's a problem with the presentation. Okay. you know the demo effect? This is exactly the same thing. And as I say, we started to build a team because I was teaching the cybersecurity master's course. Then we offered some people to come and work with us. And then we also hired someone to take care of administration and, bureaucracy. Okay, and then, Javi was from Granada. He lived in Antequera. He wanted to create the company, set up the company in Antequera. Someone else said Granada. Then we also thought about Malaga as a possible base for our company. And then in the end, we decided for Granada. And I continue to live in Madrid. Who knows, perhaps in a few years' time things will change. But nowadays, there is a significant business activity in Madrid. So therefore, we have that structure. We have the actual office in Granada, and I'm based in Madrid. So I love living here in the south of Spain. Here in the south of Spain, it's very easy for me to go for a few drinks with friends. And, that never happened to me in Madrid. Okay, so I'm not going to go and live in Madrid. So what are we doing nowadays? And what do we do? Well, I take care of relationship with customers. Well, in the other jobs that I had, I also did lots of teamwork. Our company is a very small company. Our sales force is just about building up great working groups. And, this is what I do. Teamwork, building up good teams and doing good teamwork. And then, as much as possible, we try to deliver presentations, to attend conferences, so that to make ourselves known, because we do not have any sales reps in our company. We also give very good level of service to our clients, to our teams. I treat them the way I would like them to treat me. Now I also like to have a life other than my professional life. I spend time with my kids. The time that I could not spend with my kids if I were to work for a multinational company, I pray so that my clients pay me on time or duly. And then what do? Well, I have fun breaking things. This is something that I always wanted to do. Now I'm doing it. And I also lead a team of hackers, which is even better fun than being a hacker yourself. And then we also do R&D. We do our small research. We know that this is important for team building. And now and again, because of the research and development that we do, we are offered to give presentations at conferences and congresses. And we also take part in competitions such as CTF. Well, at the end of the day, our company is driven by 3 values: technical excellence, also commitment with our clients. In some of the projects that we carry out, we lose money, and but we are sure that we want to implement that project with work with that client, and then time to market. This is what we offer as a competitive edge. And these are the outside values. But when we decided to create our company, we decided also to stick to a number of internal values. So the first project that we carried out together was in Malaysia. So the 2 of us decided to fly over there, 12-hour flights. Then a few years later, we were in Thailand. And then in that in the trip to Thailand, we decided to write down the 10 values that we believed were core for our company, and then in the end we end up with this decalogue, with this list of 10 values. So having these values in place is very, very important, because sometimes you are very busy and then you tend to forget. So if we ever forget, we come back to those values, and then these are values that we also share and communicate with our employees. So we just don't want our company to be just a pure machine to make money. And now, tips for successful company. Be surrounded by the best people. This thing, in all the projects, you require to have multidisciplinary team. Someone who is aware of hardware hacking, the other one who knows about reversing, others about exploiting. So it is just impossible to know it all. Also, motivating your employees, help them grow, make them grow. So in our company, there are already 2 people who have already delivered presentations at hacking conferences. So we want them to go back to their families and to feel proud of the company where they work, and to speak good of ourselves or the company they work in. And then we never had any disruptive idea, any breakthrough idea about any breakthrough product. We have our business model. We believe that we can be better than our competitors, and this is what has taken us where we are now. Look for challenges, search for challenges all the time. You need to challenge yourself all the time as to keep going. So now we have joined up teamwork, and we will be taking part in the European INCIBE. Since for the last month, I've been the program director of 2 congresses. We are all the time doing new things that help us to drive ourselves, to develop ourselves professionally. So not always things take place immediately. Thinking in the long term is always important. You have to be elegant. You have to be sure that what you will do today will bear fruits tomorrow. If you treat a client badly, if you treat an employee badly, you will see the negative impact of it very soon. Taking risks, but with some control, with some level of control. It is good to make decisions, but timely, the right time. Mainly, well, you want to become entrepreneurs, and then, perfect, but be entrepreneurs when you are ready for it, when you have all the necessary basis for it. Many startups are created, but many of them also fail very soon after being created, and I feel that could be really disappointing. Also, what a takeaway message: go for that you actually love. So we may get trained finish training at 22 years old and get retired at 65. Life expectancy is set at 84 years old. So it means that you will spend 42 years at work or working, looking forward for Friday and time off. So balance between work and life, that is just essential. Believe it. This might cut. You have to believe it yourself. Be yourself. Clients like that a lot. The other day I was with a client, and he told me, he just played the same joke, and I say, I just don't want to work with this person. And then the market The global is a global market. You can do good cybersecurity from Malaga, from Granada, from your small town. 80% of our invoicing or turnover comes from work that we do outside Spain. So Granada is a good base for our company, but very urgency that we all have learning English, speaking English. You have to have a good level of English. And this is my personal tip. Improvise. When you improvise something, things flow. When you see a problem, when you see challenge, go by your guts, okay? And this is something that your clients also can see and appreciate. And do those things that your mother would be proud of. If my mother were to understand what I do, surely she would be very proud of me. So this year I delivered a presentation in a conference, and my parents went over to Canada to see me delivering that speech, and they were extremely satisfied. And well, thank you very much for putting up with us up until now. So we wish you all the best in everything you decide to do in life, and then, well, as long as you are happy. Right. Thank you very much.